Hey everybody, this is Rustin with Metalholic Magazine, Metalholic Radio, and with us today, guitar virtuoso Chris Green of Furyon, and of course Rubicon Cross as well, working with CJ Snare from Firehouse. I want to talk to you about all that stuff, but first off, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks very much for having me on the show.
I absolutely. I understand you've jumped from one side of the pond to the other. You spend most of your time here in the States
I have,
now?
man. I'm basically living in Chicago at the moment, right downtown, and I spend a lot of time in Atlanta as well. The producer Rick Beato that did the Furyon Gravitas album. I've been working very closely with him on some with the Rubicon Cross stuff as well, and as well as doing some instrumental songs for an upcoming solo album that I want to do. You know, a self-indulgent piece of guitarist, virtuoso stuff, you know. I guess we've all got it in us somewhere.
Awesome. Well,
that's where I'm hanging out, yeah.
Awesome. So before we get to the Furyon and the Rubicon Cross stuff, for those on this side of the pond who haven't really gotten a chance to hear a lot of your stuff yet and don't know a whole lot about you, give us a little backstory on how your journey into music and how you came into guitar playing and maybe who influenced you along the way.
Well, myself and Matt, the lead singer of Furyon, we've been in bands with each other since we were like 15 years old. You know, right back in the days when, it was probably still cool for us to put some hairspray in and, backcomb and crimp it. We've got some awful photos of us kicking about somewhere, hopefully no one will find them. But we've been writing songs together for forever. So from the age of around about, I'd say 15 or 16, we were really into, the hair metal scene, which for in England was, it was a very small genre. Everything was happening in America, which seemed like just a million miles away at the time. If we got a chance to see an American band, all of us would just like flock. Poison came into London or something, we'd all flock down there and check it out. And that's how we grew up, sort of playing those kind of tunes. Then, with my playing especially, it moved on. I went to guitar college in London, and that got me into a lot more virtuosic players. So, Paul Gilbert, John Petrucci, those kind of players, Andy Timmons. And it kind of moved me into a little more of a technical realm. I got a lot more into progressive music. And then I think it might have been around in 2000, me and Matt actually got into a band called Pride, which was a very melodic rock band. It was a little softer than either one of us would usually do, but, the guy that had, suggested starting up this band he was pretty persuasive. And, we ended up having a lot of fun in that band. We released a couple of records on EMI in Japan. But we were really looking at doing something heavier. We started listening to, bands like Tool and Mastodon. Dream Theater, like I said before, was a big influence. And we thought, let's try something where we're going to keep the melodic vocals, but we're going to introduce some much more drop-tuned guitar playing. So we dropped everything down into C. And we started introducing a lot more progressive, overtones in the music, lots of middle sections, sort of 2 or 3 minute middle sections that weren't necessarily solos, but just kind of movements within the song. And we really started having some fun. And that's when I think we all looked at each other and thought, okay, yeah, this is where we're actually happiest. We're all kind of able to get our own little voice on our instruments out within the music. So we made that change into Furyon in round about, I'd say, 2006. And it took a few lineup changes before we got things right, to the lineup that's happening now in the band. of course, then it was a whole other story how we ended up, getting into America. But that's basically how, our influences and how we kind of moved through the melodic world into something slightly heavier.
Nice. Now, Gravitas was just released and everything, but you guys have actually had that done because you released it over in Europe, I believe, a while ago. But tell us, number one, I think you named the band. Can you give us the backstory on that? But also sort of how it all came together and maybe how the songwriting structure works within the band and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. The songwriting is very heavily geared towards myself and Matt, the singer. We don't have a standard structure how we write music. Often Matt will come in, he'll come in with a tune like Our Piece Someday, and that was like a full acoustic tune. It was almost just a straight ballad. And he threw it at me and said, what do you think of this? And it was kind of in a verse, bridge, chorus structure. And he gave it to me, and I kind of turned it into a little more of an opus track, with big intros. And I do a lot of work at home using Logic, to experiment, using drums and keyboard sounds and stuff. Just experimenting with the sounds before we take it into the rehearsal room. So at least we've got a good idea of how we'd like the song to go. It keeps things from getting stale in the rehearsal room. We've both been in situations, both myself and Matt, where you go in and you're like, okay, guys, let's write a song today. And as soon as it gets stale, it doesn't just knock everyone's confidence and creativity. It actually just creates a very negative atmosphere. So that's why we decided to start writing like that. And other times, the band would go away. Like I think four of the tracks, myself, Lee, Nickel, we went away and just hired a cottage in the middle of Devon in England, in the West Country, and we just wrote like 3 or 4 tracks of music, just locked ourselves away and then handed Matt the finished music and said, chuck some lyrics over this. So all of the songs were written very, very differently. There was no strict way of doing it. I know there's a lot of bands, like Disturbed or Dream Theater, where it's like, look, the music is done from start to finish, and then you'll hand it to the singer and say, look, now do your thing. I think Mr. Big even do it that way, as far as I've heard. But we're kind of all over the place. No strict rules at all.
Right. So I think it's more organic that way. You just approach it the way however it comes to you guys, and makes it a little more natural.
Yeah.
So. And
exactly. And one of the main songs on the album, Disappear Again, we actually wrote on the fly with the producer in the studio. Matt was sitting out by the swimming pool, and he came in and said, look, I've got this chorus idea. And he sang it to Rick, and both me and Rick sat down with the guitar, and that song came about, I'd say, in about 20 or 30 minutes from start to finish. It was so quick. That guy, Rick Beata, the producer, is a genius. He really is. He knows how to drag every ounce of creativity out of you.
Well, how did you guys connect with Rick?
Matt had been chatting to a producer called Bo Hill that had done all of... he'd been working with Kip Winger very closely for quite a few years in the early part of his career. And I think he did the first 2. I'm not sure if he did the third Winger album. But anyway, Bo had got hold of Matt and had said, I'd be interested in doing a record with you. And I said, because I'd been playing in a band, I'd been not moonlighting, but going across to the States and doing some shows, playing in Firehouse and in Nelson and this band called Scrap Metal, which comprised of the Nelson brothers, Mark Slaughter, and Kip Winger would come and sing, Jeff Scott Soto, Eric Martin from Mr. Big, all these guys it was like a kind of, not a super band, but it was like a bandstand situation where there was a main backing band, and all the lead singers would come out and sing 3 tracks from their original bands, and then they'd stay on stage and help sing the rest of the tracks. It was great fun, actually. And Kip was one of those people, and so I got to know Kip quite well. he's probably the most talented musician I think that I know in the business, actually. If you had to talk about an all-round musician, I think the guy's a genius. You know, he scores complete, you know, ballets, and next thing he's doing his 12-string acoustic gigs, and, you know, he's just unreal. So anyway, I knew that he'd had this relationship with Bo, and I called him up and just said, you know, is there any chance you'd give me the lowdown on Bo? And I won't say what he said, but, you know, he chewed my ear off for a good half an hour and dissuaded me from, you know, working with him for whatever reasons. But he asked me, why is it you want to work with him? You know, he did say, you know, if you want to work with him, then do it. I'm just saying that, you know, this is my experience. Why do you want to work with him? I said, well, we want to get that huge American sound, you know, like Shinedown get. You know, because Shinedown had just been breaking in England, really. I think they'd just done a tour with Disturbed, supporting Disturbed. And so it was very new to the English, but we'd always kept our ear to the ground in terms of what was going on in America, because we were pretty sure that that was where the sound for Furyon was going to be.
Right.
So, and he turned around and said, well, why don't you say so, man? I know Rick Beato. He produced their first record. Leave a Whisper, I think it was called. Mm-hmm. So the next thing, 20 minutes later, I'm on the phone to Rick, and where was I? I was in Atlanta at the time, actually, and Rick was 20 minutes from me. So out of all that conversation, it was really weird that out of the entire planet, producer that I'd just been introduced to was 20 minutes down the road in Stone Mountain, just outside Atlanta. So one thing led to another. I played Rick the demos that we'd been recording. He commented on how absolutely awful we were at recording demos, but he absolutely loved the songs. And I think within 6 months, we were over in America recording the album. So it moved really quickly. Yeah, I think it might have been about 4 months after that we spent, you know, really pushing and plugging, trying to get label interest and management. And then we thought, you know what, we're just going to get this out there. We had quite a strong fan base, and we're just going to release like a collector's edition, which had attached to it an animation video that a close friend of ours called Traumatron had done. So it was like a collector's limited edition thing with the video to Disappear Again, this animation video, which you can find online. You know, if you Google Furyon Disappear Again animation or something like that, you'll be able to find it. It was really cool. It was something very different for us, and so it was more of a soft release, and that's why we released it first in Europe. You know, we had a lot of help, we had a lot of backing from Classic Rock magazine. They then decided to cover mount an EP with 3 of our tracks on it, and then, you know, soon after that, Metal Hammer decided to cover mount the entire album, and you know, from that, we ended up getting the interest that we needed through management and labels, which takes us up to where we are now.
And, you didn't give me the backstory on the name.
Well, man, we'd like procrastinated on names for quite a while. You know, we'd all kind of written down loads of names, and it's strange, isn't it? Because when you think about band names, it's... You know, AC/DC, what's AC/DC? You know, I think it was like Angus Young's dad that found it on the bottom of a Hoover, you know, vacuum cleaner or something. You know, it sounds like a crazy name, but then as soon as you just connect the music with the name doesn't really mean anything anymore. It's just like AC/DC, isn't it? You don't think of it as well, that's a stupid name. They found out on the bottom of a Hoover. So we were overthinking about the whole situation, and I'd been watching this film called The Chronicles of Riddick, which was the follow-up to the Pitch Black film. Right. You know the film, the one with Van Diesel in it? Yep. I don't know if you know that film. And the race of people that he was from were called the Furyon, you know, and we kind of thought, wow, that sounds quite cool, and you know, I kind of looked it up, and it meant, like, you know, very kind of obnoxious warrior, take no prisoner type of character. And we're like, well, actually, you know what, I think that actually kind of sounds pretty much like us, because we were really just full on, you know, self-publicizing, you know, doing everything ourselves. And then when you write it down, it was like, oh, cool, it actually kind of looks like Fury on, you know, kind of like Kill Switch Engage, but another twist to it, yeah. So it was really good. Yeah, it's really good chanter. You know, it's got that nice little 3-syllable thing going on. Furyon, Furyon. Yeah, it goes down well live. So that's where it came from, basically, the film Chronicles of Riddick.
Yeah, and it's a great name. It is. It's hard to get a good name. I was just talking to Jim from Kissin' Dynamite the other day. He said they went through some of the strangest stuff, and it was actually an AC/DC song that was a guitar, was a ringtone on a guy's cell phone, and it happened to ring while they were discussing it. And they're like, Kissin' Dynamite. Yeah, that's it. You know, and it was that simple for them. But
yeah, exactly. Exactly, and people just now know them as that name. You know, it's not important how they came up with it or anything. It's just the music's known with that name, and you move on from there.
Absolutely. So now you guys, the Gravitas album has been out for a little while, but you guys, because it has been around for a while, you guys are already, I know you're already writing, I think, for the next album?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's never really stopped writing. It's just that Gravitas is such a strong album. You know, a second album would need to be, you know, equally as strong. I know that both myself and Matt have always been very aware of bands' second albums. There's always a bit of a jinx on them, you know, because you ask any musician in the business that's been able to have a career that has passed 4 albums, which, let's face it, these days is actually pretty slim. If you can get a band that's actually getting a career to go past the 4th album, they're doing pretty well. Right. In the climate of, you know, illegal downloading and you know, the merging of all the record companies, and then being a little less let's see, and choose my words wisely here, or maybe putting a little less effort in than they should do at trying to get out there and push the band, you know.
Right.
So a lot of the albums that we'd grown up listening to were like, oh man, why is the second album always stuck? You know, it's like the third album's always great, first album's great, second album, and it's because, and as I said, when you speak to, you know, musicians that have had a career, they say it's because you've had your whole life to write a first album. You've got all of those little things, you know, whether they're cliche riffs or, you know, the strong chord progressions that you always like using. You're summing up all of your feelings, everything you have to say into that first album. When the second album comes along, there's a lot of pressure. You're trying to recreate the whole thing again. You're also thinking to yourself, do I want to directly just recreate this? Do we want to slightly move forward with our sound? If we move forward, are we going to alienate our audience? There's a lot of things that go through your mind. So as far as, you know, writing material for the new stuff, yes, you know, there's new material being written, but I'm not going to say what the kind of, what the sound is for it.
But, of course, we'll be looking forward to it, because, as you said, Gravitas is an excellent album. I love every bit of it, so... Now,
thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Now, you also were, and are, I guess, working with CJ Snare from Firehouse. You guys put together a project. You did an EP so far. I don't know where we're at with the album called Rubicon Cross. Give us a little bit of backstory on how that all came together and what's going on with it now.
Well, Rubicon Cross came about through when the band before Furyon that we were in was the band called Pride that I mentioned earlier, and we were out on tour, and we supported Firehouse, and me and CJ became very good friends. He was going through a divorce at the time, and he was really keen on getting a solo record together. So we hit it off. He decided to come over probably only maybe 4 weeks after the tour finished. He flew back over and stayed at my place. I was living in Brighton on the south coast of England at the time. And we just to feel it out, we wrote a couple of songs to see what was going to happen. And the first track we wrote was Moving On, which was the one of our more favourite tracks, even to this day. So we knew the chemistry was working, so we started moving forwards to write an album. I think so far we're beating Def Leppard by 3 years on how long it's taken to get an album out. You know, I think we're probably on like year 6 or something. Might even be year 7 by now. you know, with Firehouse's schedule and my schedule, you know, and there's been marriages, divorces, deaths, births, you know, there's been so much going on. It's just been very difficult for me and him to get in the same place at the same time. Now it's a lot easier because he lives just outside Milwaukee and I'm in Chicago, so we're only like just over an hour between us, which makes things a lot easier. And we released the EP just as a little taster. It went down very well. People have been extremely kind about it because, you know, again, like Furyon, not quite as heavy as Furyon, but, you know, CJ's been known very much for, you know, that Firehouse sound, which is very melodic, very much based towards that hair metal, early 90s rock sound. So again, I introduced a little more drop tuning and, you know, maybe not so much progressive, but just a heavier edge to it. And now we're actually only one song away from the whole album. We wanted to kind of create an album that was that, you know, that phrase, all killer, no filler. We wanted to make sure that there was going to be 10 extremely strong songs that, you know, would just really stand up. So there wasn't any album fillers. So we're one away, and I think we're already on our way with the last track. So we'll probably track and mix that probably by the summer.
Nice.
We've also got, I think it's on the 21st of May, we just found out that our new single, which is called Locked and Loaded, is going to be on the new Xbox and PS3 game Dirt Showdown, the racing, you know, the like dirt track game.
Right.
So, you know, people going out and buying that, they're going to get the first taste of the new single. And then after that, you know, it'll be available on iTunes. So that'll kind of preempt the album release, which should be in the summer.
Actually, well, yeah, because, I mean, just in case the world does end at the end of the year, we got to get that out there.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Oh. Exactly.
Now, what about what about your solo project? Because I believe you're also you're working on one of those, what do we call them, self-indulgent virtuoso pieces?
Yeah, it's just self-indulgent stuff that I guess no one else would have the patience to listen to in the band. You know, so it's like you do it all yourself, and then you know everyone has to listen to it because it's just you listening to it. What happened there is the last couple of years, my father had been terminally ill with cancer, and last December he passed away. And I'd always talked about doing either an instrumental album, whatever you want to call it, a solo album, something that was just mine, that I'd written 100%. You know, and no matter who you write songs with, whatever project, you know, there's always compromise. It's the ability to compromise that can make a great songwriting team. People that get too precious about their tunes, it creates tension in a songwriting team. So when you're doing it completely on your own, it's great. You know, no one there to argue with. You're just like, well, you know, I might make this solo 4 minutes long. What do you think? Yeah, I think you should. You know, someone else said, sort of tell me otherwise. So I started thinking about how I wanted to go about writing it. Do I want to write a instrumental album that based, you know, on the kind of the Joe Satriani, Steve Vai sounds, the basic kind of sound of an instrumental guitar solo album. And I wanted to do something slightly different. So the tunes that I'm writing for that are actually much more based around a progressive instrumental band. It's not just lead guitar playing all over the tunes, although there is a lot of kind of acrobatic guitar work. It's just progressive music, you know, kind of like what Liquid Tension Experiment were doing. You know, all the drums are very, very intense and technical, and I've been having a lot of fun writing it. And the crowning moment so far for writing it is I decided to cover a tune by my dad's band. My dad was he was a musician as well, and in the 70s his band Deep Feeling released an EP called the Guillotine EP, and it was like so, you know, 70s progressive. I love that kind of stuff, all over the place, you know. And I did an instrumental cover of the opening track, Welcome for a Soldier, and it came out great. You know, I was using like EBOs and really extreme reverbs on it and stuff, and it came out so retro that I was really, really bowled over with it. So that's the sound that I'm going for. I want to make it, I actually want to make it so I can go out and take it out live, so it'd be like a real band affair. Progressive instrumental music.
Nice. So when you're not doing the Furyon stuff, you're not traveling back and forth, you're not working on Rubicon Cross, you're not doing your solo album stuff, what do you do away from music?
Apart from that?
Yeah, I mean, what do you do to sort of decompress from all of that and just relax?
Honestly, what I do to get away from all of that other stuff is I play in my other band that I do in Chicago. That's my relaxing time. I do a band called Space Wolf with some very close friends of mine, Tom Schofield, who was the drummer in Soil, and Brendan and Alex. They're taking a band called Defcon in Chicago, and we're basically writing and jamming complete retro stoner Black Sabbath meets, you know, the Sword in a drop C, you know, just, I don't know. I can't even really explain it. It's great fun. It's the kind of thing that I could go in the rehearsal room, drink 10 beers and still play every single note perfectly.
Nice.
So if that's not relaxation, I don't know what it is.
Chris, I appreciate so much you're taking the time to talk with us.
Of course, man. Thanks very much for having me on the show as well, mate.
Absolutely. Take care, brother.